All right, guys, we're back on the Kevin and Fred show, and today I get to be joined in studio. I like this. Because as I was telling you, Trevor. First of all, let me introduce you, Trevor Halpern. How's it going, buddy?
Good, man.
As I was just saying to you before we started recording, I've only done a handful of recordings here in studio, if you will, and by
Yep.
studio I mean the extra office that we turned into a studio.
Don't give it away.
So it could sound really cool. But it's nice to be able to do more interviews with folks who are local. You're here in the Phoenix market as
Yep.
well. You and I crossed paths a couple years ago now on a panel that our lenders were putting on,
Yep.
and just kind of were like, oh, I think I like that guy. We should go hang out sometime. So we've been able to do that a few times now and
Yep.
get to know each other. And so, first of all, thanks for being a guest on the show, dude.
Thank you for asking me to come, man. This is awesome.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Trevor, why don't we do this, man? For the listener who maybe doesn't know you yet, um, give me the quick little rundown of what your business looks like today. Then I'm gonna jump around to a whole bunch of different things
Yeah.
from there.
Yeah.
But let's just start there and kind of lay the foundation, and then we'll go.
I love it. Let's see. I've been in the business for 10 years, and I've gotten to the point where right now, with what I'm doing, is I'm running what I call a solo team. So I'm the sole producer, but I have people around me that help to make sure that our clients are getting a really good experience and that we're delivering on what we promised we deliver on.
Great
So
concept.
yeah, right. Yeah, go figure, right? Yeah. But if it was just me, and the solo agent right now is struggling so hard. And if it was
So
just
hard.
me without leverage, I wouldn't be able to do the amount of business that I'd be able to do, and I wouldn't be delivering as well as we do or think we do. And as a referral business, when people kick us people back, like, okay, we did a good job, we showed you value, that sort of stuff. So I've developed this solo team mentality. I'm a network-based agent. So 95% of my business comes from people I know, friends, family, referral, repeat, that sort of stuff. So that's where I am in the biz.
Awesome. So when you say 95% or network based, like was it that way from the get go?
Yep. Yeah.
What
Yeah.
what was it about that I mean, did you have some guidance early on to do that, or was that just sort of your natural inclination?
Natural inclination. I mean, that's a great question. When I first started in this business, I'd been in a couple of different lines of business. I knew a lot of people. I grew up here. And what I was always good at doing in the other lines of business that I was in was connecting people. But those connections usually didn't end up with like revenue for what I was doing,
Right.
right? And so I thought when I came into this business, I thought long and hard about what I wanted to do. When I came into real estate, I was like, man, I just want to continue to connect people. And now when I connect, like I always say, weave a web and see what gets caught in it. Like, hey, you should
Yeah.
know so and so, and you should blah blah blah, and just being constantly valuable to people. All of a sudden, you're top of mind, and you've got this web going, and things just get caught in it.
Yeah.
So that's I came into it thinking I know a lot of people. I think I can provide a really good value, and so I just started interacting with my network. And the more people saw that I was actually doing this and doing it full time, the more people called.
Yeah. That's I tell a lot of our younger agents, like on our team, or just people I've spoken to, first couple years in real estate, it's like there's the people. This is my experience, or at least my impression. I'd love to hear your thought on it. Is there's the people that are going to do business with you right away because they love you, like because you just got in real estate. They're for sure doing business with you and setting you business.
Mhm.
And then there's other people, they're for sure not.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe they will. I don't know if it's like there's some sort of magical 5, 6 year mark. There's so much turnover in real estate,
Yep.
as you know, that at a certain point they go, "Oh, he's serious. This is
Yeah.
really the career. Okay,
Yeah.
now I can trust them either with my own business or my referrals."
That's it. I agree with that 100%. What I found is no one wanted to be the first one.
Right.
Like literally no one wanted to be the first. They're like, okay, like you've had a couple starts and stops at different careers. Like, is this one gonna last? Do I really want to be the first? And so my actual first deal after 6 months in the business, I had nothing. I didn't join a team. I just came into an office and was like, I'm gonna do real estate and started charging it the way I thought it was supposed to be done. First 6 months, no business. And then I was on at that brokerage. It was called desk time.
Desk time,
Yeah, I think it was that. Yeah, I think that's what
like
it's
floor time.
floor time. Floor
Okay.
time. That's what it floor time. So any call that comes into the brokerage during my set number of hours, I get to take it as a sales lead. And it was literally a call on a listing, and introduced me to this buyer that I met out there. It wasn't the house, but I started working with him as a buyer, and then found him another house, got him under contract there, sold him the house, and then he ended up being my first listing too.
Nice.
And then after that, it was like the dam broke, right? And I was able to deliver that success to my network. People found out, oh, he's got deals. And now they're not the first. He knows what he's
He's not
doing,
going to practice on
right?
us. Yeah.
And I made sure that in those early days too, trying to capitalize on it, like showing that I'm doing this, being, having setting up little things that were repetitive, that were low maintenance on my side, to go out to my network. Hey, I'm in real estate. Hey, I'm in real estate. Hey, I'm in real estate and I'm actually selling homes. You know what I mean?
Yes, totally. That's awesome, man. So 6 months, like, did you ever think about quitting in that 6 months?
There were times I would literally, and I was one of those guys. I went into the office every day. Like I had like that's how I have to do it. If I don't go into the office, it's really
Yeah.
hard to work. It's always been that way for me. And so I was one of those guys. I was in there at 8:30 every morning, and I'd be there until 5:36, And there were days where I could literally feel my face and my ears turning bright red.
Yeah.
Like, and there were days where I just pushed back from my desk and was like, what am I doing? Fuck it. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Like
Oh yeah.
you have no idea what you're doing. Business isn't coming. There were one of those days I called my dad and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, this isn't working. Like, I'm super frustrated. And he was like, go home. And I was like, what do you mean go home? And he's like, part of why you're in a business like this is so that you don't have to be tied to a desk all the time. If you're frustrated and it's not working, go home. So I was like, all right. So I went home and like I refreshed, I recharged, I got my mind right. And the next day I was back at it, you know?
Yeah.
But it was like, hey, okay, I do have the ability to get out of here and get out of my own head and get out of my own way, every once in a while. You can't pull the ejection handle too often, otherwise you're not going to be productive. But,
Yeah.
fatherly wisdom, go home.
Yeah.
He's a lawyer, he bills hours, so if he leaves, it's like, he can see the meter going down. With us, it's like, yeah, it's all broken down into hours, but big chunks of commission at once.
I had a mentor, or kind of one of the first mentors I'd ever had. He used to say, you know, I think some people's natural inclination is to like push through that. And he's like, his thought was the same. He's like, no, go, like, you should go home. If you're having your worst day, like, just stop.
Yeah.
Like the day that you're crushing it, if your goal is to so many contacts or so many sales a day, or whatever that looks like,
Mhm.
and you get there at like noon, then keep going. Go till 9 o'clock that night. Like that's the day you keep pushing.
Ride the wave. Yeah.
But the day that you're like running into a brick wall, go home.
Yeah.
Just stop.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. And it's funny because I learned, my dad taught me that. Your mentor taught you that. And like, how many times have you deployed that
Oh,
like in your
yeah,
career?
absolutely.
Like
Both ways. Yes.
I do it. I mean, there are times like, it seems less and less frequent now that, the business, when you've been doing it for long enough, you can sense when things are going a certain
For
direction,
sure.
you know how to head it off, you know how to handle it. Oh, I've been down this path. It's not as devastating, whatever. But there's still days like there was one recently, I looked across the office at my operations coordinator. I was like, I'm going home now. And she's like, okay. Like, she's like, yes, I think you should.
She's like, please, for all
Yeah,
of our sake,
please.
go
Yeah,
home.
yeah, exactly. So there are times where you get to pull that lever, but I think that's it. A little bit of experience, a little bit of time, some learning lessons that you don't have to keep repeating, so that when that feeling, that thing starts coming back up, you're like, I've been down this path. I know you.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Okay, so you mentioned, let's go back to that, to kind of your business model, right?
Hmm.
So, you just mentioned an operations coordinator. Tell
Hmm.
me, what are all the, outside of Trevor,
Yeah.
like, who are the other staff positions?
Yeah. Yeah. So I've got right now I have one full-time W-2 employee.
Okay.
I'm probably going to bring another one on. We're actually in expansion mode. So the way the structure of the team looks, and as I have it right now, there's one open position, and that open position is client concierge.
Okay.
So that's a W-2 full-time W-2 employee that is really the field rep. Show the homes, make sure clients are getting delivered to them homes like, hey, have you seen this one? Have you seen that? I think this one would work for you. That concierge is really out kind of a showing agent, They're out running errands, dropping gifts off, doing pop buys.
So they're like really an extension of you.
They're an extension of me. They
Okay.
report up. The way we're going to have it, it's going to report up to JC, my operations coordinator, and then I view and see all the reports that are going on. I interject where needed. I guide and direct, as opposed to more like of the direct day-to-day management. But yeah, they're an extension of me out in the marketplace to get clients, like to keep the flame stoked,
Absolutely.
and to get out there, show homes, to get out there and like, let's say there's a listing where it's like, hey, when we do have showings, I mean, in a normal market, when it's like, everyone just flood in here for 2 hours and then write your offer. You know what I mean? In a
God,
normal market,
normal. What the hell
yeah,
is that?
yeah,
It's been
right,
so long.
dude, it's unreal. But like, there are listings where let's say it's a high value listing. Let's say it's a couple $1,000,000 and you're probably not going to get the flood, but you're going to get showings, and it should be lit up. The windows should be open. The
Yeah.
temperature should be right. Like the concierge is going to go out and do that. So that role was filled. It's vacant. JC and I were like managing, the showings and all the stuff. But we're like the last couple weeks, we started to see some cracks. Like, hey, we got it. We have to manage this. Like, time to bring the concierge back. So
So
it's
because that's a role you've had before.
that's a role I've had
Okay.
before. It's been vacant for about 6 months.
Okay.
We did have some help with some showing agents, kind of a la carte showing agents at our
Right.
brokerage. But those folks have moved to another brokerage. So now it's like, okay, well, the universe has spoken and it's time to hire
Time to
again.
refill.
Well, dude, you
Yeah.
know how it is. Every time you go to hire, every time you it's like time to leverage. It's like pucker factor. You're like,
Yeah.
here we go. Here's the expense. Here's the whatever. But it's going to work because you planned it and built it. So back to your question, the structure is me, client concierge as a field rep, operations coordinator. Those two are W-2 employees. Operations coordinator manages my transaction management team. They
Okay.
manage my marketing people. They make sure everything that we talk about getting done is getting done. And it's like my one source, like, hey, did the thing get done with the marketing stuff? And she'll be like, yes, no, waiting on so-and-so. Right. So operations is more business operations, as well
Okay.
as getting in the mix, making sure that clients, once the contract comes in, gets to the finish line. So, inspection reviews, writing benzers, that sort of stuff.
So that's the operations.
Yep, that's operations. And the reason why it that was for a while on concierge, but this operations coordinator has a particular expertise. She used to work for a luxury home builder. So she can go into inspections and be like, that's
So she knows
wonky.
it.
She
Okay.
knows it. So because she knows it so well, we're always like playing to our strengths, punting to our weaknesses. Like, why are you doing that? Shouldn't you do that? Why am I doing this? Shouldn't you do that? Why are you doing that? Shouldn't I do this? And constantly like shuffling the deck. And so between those two, we've got field work covered. We have internal operations and budgeting and all of that covered. And then underneath that, we've got a handful of 1099 contractors. A marketing assistant helps me to make sure that social media is getting out there, that posts are being drafted, all that stuff. I go in and make sure it's in my language, agree with it, disagree with it, chuck this one. Let's do that instead. She really manages all of that, make sure our newsletter is buttoned up and looks good, make sure videos are uploaded where they need to be. And then I've got a graphic designer that makes sure that everything looks good and in uniform.
Okay.
And then I've got a digital marketing coordinator who he's basically like a virtual chief marketing officer, and he looks at all the SEO stuff and develops a strategy like, hey, Google says that these searches are up 1,500%. We need to write a blog about these.
Right.
So then we write a blog about it. And then now we have SEO juice bringing people to our website, showing that and raising our visibility in cyberspace.
So these people are minus the first two that we
Yep.
talked about, they're all 1099.
They're all 1099s.
Contractor employees.
Exactly. Like I'm not the only one that works with them. They
Perfect.
have multiple clients. And then we've got the final piece of that puzzle is PR, publicists, making sure that like when we write blogs and whatever, that they're going out and that they're being picked up by media. So I'll have stuff published in AZ Big Media, and that's pointing back to my website. And now when that points back to my website looks better and grows. All
Even more
classic SEO stuff. Yeah. And really all of this is designed to make sure that my network is engaged, and that my network like looks at me as the pro, the expert, right? Like, oh, if we're going to go buy and sell real estate, let's use Trev. He's, he's been published or whatever. Like it really makes my network and my sphere One, raises my visibility, and two, raises my credibility. And so the phone rings more. It's hard to quantify it though. Be like, oh, that came from there and that came from there. It's like kind of coming
Dude, it's
from
so
the
hard to
omniverse,
quantify anything at this
dude.
point. Like
Yeah.
last click attribute. Dude, everything you can be so omnipresent and through so many different
Yep.
channels. It's virtually impossible these days.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so hard. My digital content guy calls it the omniverse, the
Yeah.
omnichannel. Like it's coming from everywhere.
Yep.
And yeah, it's hard to track. And as a network-based guy, it's even harder. And like marketing principles would say if you're buying leads and all that, like track every penny, you know?
Leads are one thing.
Right.
If they did they click the button, did
Yeah.
they opt in? Like
Yeah.
that part,
Yeah.
right? But but even from there, once they're a lead, depending on how they get treated or someone from your network, yeah, it's virtually impossible. You've kind of obviously you got to be smart about it, be able to make sure you have a return and
Mhm.
like a profit.
Mhm.
And if you're doing those things, like that's obviously great, but it's really hard to like narrow down like, hey, this is the one thing that's really, kicking for me.
So hard. And it's like you almost hit, to your point earlier about like if you're in the office one day and like you're just firing, like go until 9 o'clock. It's like there are these waves, right? Like something's clicking. Like there's
Yeah.
something that out there that's mixed, and all of a sudden, like everyone's calling. And then it like kind of goes away, and then something clicks, and you just kind of ride these waves, you know? It's
Does
it's
it
hard to track.
does that for you? I'm curious, does that change what you're doing on a day-to-day basis?
Not on day to day. Our marketing mix and our approach will change. We have two marketing meetings a month. So we have one which is an analysis, like, hey, what went well and what are we doing?
So when you say we, who participates in that
Yeah.
meeting?
Yeah. So in our marketing meeting, it's me, it's JC, the operations
Okay.
coordinator. When the concierge role gets filled, it'll be the concierge because they're out there in the field. They know what people are, what the vibe is.
Right.
It's my publicist, and it's my digital content director, and it's my marketing assistant. So
Okay.
it's a tribe,
So
and my
you
wife.
you really are so you are getting the whole crew together for this.
Yep,
Okay.
twice a month, the crew gets together and we look at what we did and we provide analytics. And then the next one based on the analytics is planning. So,
Okay.
execute, and then we look to see what worked, and then we plan the next one. Okay, that didn't work. We shouldn't do any more of that. Or like one of the things, I've got a podcast, and one of the things the first thing that my digital content guy said was, dude, you shouldn't be doing it. It's not doing anything. You're like out there looking at the numbers, it's not really effective. But when I see people, they're like, bro, I saw your podcast, and it's like, okay, like
Yeah.
people are my network may not, when you look at the metrics, it may not be huge, but the people that are engaged are the people that I want to be engaged.
Well, I mean, dude, if you think about it, I don't know how big you consider your sphere of influence is. But the reality is if you've got, I'm gonna just call it 150 people, like that's good for 30 plus transactions a year. So
Totally.
let's just say I'm not saying this is your goal or my goal or that it should be anybody's goal, but let's say the goal was 30 transactions a year.
Mhm.
You only need 150 people to pay attention to what you're doing,
Mhm.
and that's not hard to do. And
Mhm.
if you're getting 100 downloads a podcast, not a lot of downloads, and in that scenario, that could be uber effective, right?
Totally.
So it's really about like, well, what's the result? Like, what are we going after?
Yeah.
We're not trying to be, Tim Ferriss or Joe Rogan or something
Right.
with the podcast. We're trying to make sure we're in that omniverse, I think,
Yeah.
as your guy called it,
Yeah.
right? And so it could
Yeah.
be super effective
Yeah.
with what seems like a small number that is just like perfect.
Well, what's funny too, you say, 150 people need to pay attention. They barely even need to pay attention. They just need to you just need to be in front of them
You just need to remember to get them to pay attention for like a second.
for a half second to be
Yep.
like, hey, oh, there's Kevin again. Oh, hey, there's Trevor again. And then guess
Yep.
what? Right as they're talking real estate, either with each other
Yep.
or with someone else, they will have just glanced by something that we did, and they're like, hey, you gotta call my buddy Kevin. You gotta
Yep.
call Trevor.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
It's just about it's so much about that. I think even more and more too with just the technology, the different companies that we have that we're dealing with both not just the iBuyers, but even like the hedge funds, et cetera, and just the changes going on in our industry. You can still buy leads. Like we still buy leads. we just focus more of our time on the people we already know. Like that.
Totally.
And I think the more you get into this, like the more we're going to have to do that, right? Because
Mhm.
we can build a moat around those people. Like
Mhm.
eventually we're going to all get priced out of buying new leads
Mhm.
eventually.
Well, yeah, and then, when you're buying something that, everyone else can buy, the only way you're gonna be able to acquire it is to outmaneuver them or outpay them. It's just like being out in the market right now as a
Yep.
buyer.
Yeah.
Everyone wants this one house. Everyone wants those leads, and guess what? The person that's gonna pay the most is gonna get it. So to your point, you're gonna price out. They
Yeah.
become less effective. You see your percentages go down on them.
Yeah.
People half the time, I don't know, like, we use this tool, what is it? Where you partner with a lender and
Homebot.
HomeBot. We use
Yeah.
HomeBot, and half the time I get a ping from a client on that. Hey, so and so wants a CMA, and when I connect with them, they're like, "Oh, sorry, I didn't know it like went to a live person. Like, I didn't know that, like, so that's just an internal click. But if you're paying for leads, and then half the time when you get in touch with them, they're hostile or they just they're getting calls from a bunch of agents, and it becomes a return on your time too, as much as a return on your investment.
Yeah, the lead game is tough. I mean, personally, I still love it, because it's a war of attrition, but going into it, you have to know that it's a war of attrition. It is
Right.
not like it's not this easy thing that I think that people have their, they think, "Oh, I can just buy leads and then I'm gonna have business." And it's like, you can buy leads, but then you gotta really work hard.
Yeah,
Like,
you gotta work on.
and to your point, okay, you gotta differentiate yourself. Like, you've gotta constantly be on top of that, and
Mhm.
it's such a it's such a hard game that I think is going to just get harder and harder to try to compete in, and ultimately, I mean, I suppose you don't have to. It's just my belief that you've got to be able to go to a sphere of influence, a past client list,
Yeah.
whatever, what a database, whatever you want to call
Yep.
it. Like that's got to be at the core of every real estate business.
Totally. I've got a buddy of mine who's a branch manager. And when he brings someone on, the only way he's going to bring them on and give them a draw against future income is if they have a spreadsheet of 100 people, like
Yeah,
filled out, not just a name, like name, email address, phone number. These are the people that you're going to call and work. This is what's going to get you going. So, yeah, I mean, having a database and being able to dig in past clients is huge. But if you're an agent starting out, and let's say one, you may not have a deep bench, you may not have a deep network, or two, obviously you don't have any past clients. So where do you start? Leads buying, going to a team, and then once you start showing value, you've got some hits. I was talking to an agent yesterday or the day before. He's been in the business for 4 years, and business is slow right now. He's having trouble with getting his buyers over the hump and whatever. I was like, dude, you're about to hit that sweet spot where the people that you sold homes to are now starting to call you.
yeah,
4 years later, 5 years later, then the phone rings. Hey, we're ready to upgrade or move in. Blah blah blah. That's when that side of the database starts kicking. So until you really get there, you've got to acquire the business, however you can. But
yep.
you probably know this statistic better than I do. What is it that it's like, 80% of people would use their agent again if they could only remember who it
Yeah,
was,
exact.
right?
Something
It's
weird like
something like
that.
that.
Yeah,
So from day one, from closing number one, you have to have a plan with how you're going to stay engaged with that person.
yeah, exactly. A buddy of mine was in town from Portland yesterday and was teaching a class, and he just was talking about the amount of time and effort that people will put into meeting somebody new versus staying in touch with the people we already know.
It's like chasing unicorns or chasing ghosts, as
Yeah.
I call it.
Like he gave the example, and I mean, he even said, like, there's nothing wrong with doing an open house. Open house is great. But like, okay, you do an open house, let's say it's 3 hours, and then you got a half an hour putting out signs, you got a half an hour picking up signs, maybe you got a half an hour drive there, and half at a minimum, you got 5 hours into it,
Yep.
right? At a minimum. And you might have met someone there, maybe not, but maybe you did that can turn into a client. But maybe you could also invest that 5 hours into your database. Like,
Right.
would you see a better return for that? And I think that more people would see a better return for that. Granted, if you don't have a database yet, that's not who I'm talking to right
Hmm.
now, right? But if you've got a database, you've got past clients, you've got a sphere of influence, like your time, like until that is taken care of, everything else is a distraction.
Totally. And it's so true. And especially on the open house front, it's funny because um uh uh Brian North
Yeah.
the founder of North&Co was talking to me one day. He's like, so you have people sign in at open houses? And I was like, nah, that's dude. I'm like, I don't like doing it. I like, I know that their biggest barrier to walking in that door is, Mr. Agent being like, hey, slide in, cause I'm
Yeah.
going to call your ass. You know what I mean? And so, he was like, okay, so if you're not getting them to sign in, you can't follow up with them. He's like, he's like, what else do you like to do? And I was like, well, I like hanging with my family. I like going hiking. I like, going up to our cabin. He's like, then don't hold open houses. Go to the cabin. He's like, because if you're not capturing the lead,
I love
right?
Brian.
Yeah. He's like, don't do it, dude.
Yeah.
If you're not getting their contact info, yeah, you may stumble. Someone may come in and you're like, hey, like you
But
may make a connection.
you may, but like the chances of it are so small. Like
Right.
I also could win the lottery.
Right.
I mean, I guess I'd have to buy a ticket, but
Yeah.
still,
Right.
you
Yeah. You
know,
can't win if you don't play.
right?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's kind of the same thing though,
It,
if you look at it.
yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, like your time would literally be better spent relaxing, recharging,
Yeah.
or maybe even working on the database instead.
Exact call. If you're afraid to capture people's names, guess what you're going to be afraid to do? Call them.
Yeah.
Right. So if I'm not even going to ask you for your info, then I don't have a follow-up system. And if I'm a leads based agent trying to go and buy leads and trying to capture leads at open houses, and I won't capture your name so that I can put you in a database and follow up with you, like right there, the writing on the wall is
Don't
I'm
do
not
it.
approaching this business
Yeah.
right.
Don't do it. Find
Don't
another
do
way.
it. Yes. Find another way.
That, and which is, by the way, and you and I have talked about this before. It's one of the beautiful things is there's a
Yes.
lot of other ways
Yeah.
to generate business,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. All day. And that's what's so great about real estate is you get to do it how you want to do it. It's your little micro business. It's an extension. Your little business is an extension of who you are as a person. And so
Yep.
you get to operate it however you want.
Yeah. So back in that kind of, I guess in that thought of operate it the way you want. Tell me, what did you call your name again? Your model
Solo team.
solo team.
Yeah.
So what was there like an inflection point for you where you're like, hey, I'm doing this, so what I now call solo team. Like,
Yeah.
what was it that led you to that decision?
It was every once in a while, as this business tends to do, it makes you want to add agents to your team.
Yeah.
you know this as a team
Yeah.
lead, right?
Yeah.
I mean, your model is built on this. And so, especially as a solo agent, you get to points where you feel like your career is not going to progress until you add team agents, because that's what this business is about. If you want to be a mega agent, if you want to be a lead of a mega team, like you have to add team agents. And so I various times, especially over the last 4 or 5 years since I switched brokerages and went to the entrepreneurial brokerage that is North&Co. Like I got to the point where I was like, time to add team agents. So then I'd start talking to Brian about it. I'd start talking to my executive coach about it. I'd start putting the pieces together. And then we'd all get to this point where we're like, what are you doing? What am I doing? Why am I doing this?
Why did I do that?
Yeah. And there was a conversation with my wife. I was like, time to add team agents. Here we go. Let's da 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 da. And this was right after I'd brought on the concierge for the first time, and things were rolling. And there was one afternoon where I was in my pool and the phone rang. I was in my pool with my family and the phone rang. It was a Sunday and it was my concierge. And I didn't even know she was out showing homes. She's like, hey, I'm with so-and-so. They want to write an offer. Here's this and that, the information. And I started crying. I was like, it's working. Like I'm with my family and things are happening. And so that really started operating. And then I was like, time to add team agents. We can do this. Look at how this is working. Now it's time to go. And my wife was like, she's like, hold up a sec. She's like, so you just got your team, your little solo team operating so that you're not Mr. Guy all the time. Like every phone call gets answered. You get no sleep. You're up in the middle of the night. You're doing all the things. You're answering all the client questions and calls and agent questions and calls. You just got to the point where like a huge percentage of that is offloaded. And now you want to bring agents on so that you can have their phone calls that are like, I feel sad, because how so much of that is like things aren't working. What do I need to like pumping people up and doing all this stuff? So I offloaded and created space for my family and to live a little bit more. And then I was going to fill it with agents. And I was like, yeah, that doesn't feel right. And then talking, all of my mentors and coaches were all like, yeah, it doesn't feel right. Like the trajectory of my business as a solo agent, I'm growing it by 20 to 25% a year, over a decade. Like that's, dude,
It's significant.
I'll take that.
So, I mean, it's funny you say, like when you said if you want to become the mega agent, you like you add agents. Yeah, everybody knows that. Like it's no
Right.
secret. But what I noticed was your choice of words. It wasn't if you want to make more money,
Right.
which I think is the thing that ultimately a lot of
Dude,
people want.
we've talked about this. Yeah.
And whether we'll admit it or not, like I'm perfectly okay admitting I'm a capitalist. I like to make money. I want to
Hmm.
make as much money as I possibly can.
Hmm.
But more than that, like I want my time first.
Yep.
No doubt, I want my time first. Money is a distant second to that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Uh, but what I see is people who like you obviously had whether that was because your wife said hold on or if you would have got there yourself anyways, but like most people just like don't even see that of like, hey, I should go I should go a different route,
Hmm.
and they just go, oh, well, look, there's these other look at the top 5 teams in my office. I'm just going to copy what they do, and it
Exactly.
doesn't fit their
Right.
personality, it doesn't fit their goals, it doesn't fit what they want, and so then they do this, and then it's like this constant cycle of like falling on their face and
Yep.
never really committing to one model or the other.
Right. Right. And because to your point, they haven't been introspective enough to be like, is this really what fits me? And that's where I came and have a couple of times come to that. Yeah, I'm not bringing on team agents because, especially one of my mentors that works with me on Headspace stuff um, is like, he's like, dude, anytime you're gonna do something, there has to be like a plus plus. Like you make more money and you get more time with your family.
Right.
You get more time with your family and you get to blah blah blah. Like whatever it is, there has to be a plus plus. And he's like, every time you get, because I'll get antsy, you get antsy,
Yeah.
right? The entrepreneurial spirit is like, oh man, I'm bored, or like, oh, I want to do something, or look, squirrel, let me add a team agent, right? And every time I start looking external, well, maybe I'll go, join a board, or maybe I'll go do another charity. My my mentor will go, he'll be like, okay, well, take that energy that you want to move out and pull it back in. He's like, until you are perfect, spend your time on you and your inner circle. He's like,
Yeah.
how does it look? How is your inner circle? How does your really tight circle look and feel? And it's like, dude, it feels really good. He's like, yeah, so don't go break it unless there's a plus plus.
Yeah, there's so much more value in what I would call going deep
Mm-hmm.
than to instead of just trying all these new things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is easy to get caught in that trap. I've done it. Most everybody has, but there really is just so much value. I remember I had a call. This was about a year and a half ago with somebody who was at one time kind of a pretty strong mentor in my life, business wise, and we were just catching up on stuff. And one of the things he's like, "Okay, so so what's next?" Well, you know what? I was like, I was like, I think I'm just kind of like
Yeah.
I'm in my groove, and I think I'm gonna be here for a while. And I'll never forget. He's like, I'm really glad I heard you say that. He's like,
Wow.
so many people I know get to, where you're at, whether that happens to be financially, business wise, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And they go, okay, cool. This is going well. What can I add to it? Or what else can I start
Mm-hmm.
doing? And then instead of this thing getting just amazingly big and awesome, that it just kind of never really gets past that point. It sort
Right.
of stays mediocre and they go to add something else that's
Right.
mediocre. And if it would just stay right there a little bit longer and just go a little bit deeper, like the whole world starts to open up.
Well, I was just gonna say, and it opens up things that you didn't even expect to be open,
Yeah.
like patience,
Yeah.
sowing seeds and deep roots,
For
going
sure.
deep. God, it pays, and it pays in these ways that yeah, you didn't expect.
Yeah.
I always find that the more I force things, the less it works out. Just in life,
I was
relationships,
gonna say life, business,
business,
all of it,
dude.
relationship,
Yes, like
friendships, all of it.
yeah,
If you got to force it,
yep.
you just got to go, am I, every once in a while, I'll ask myself that question, like, am I forcing this or are
Hmm.
we forcing something here that we
Hmm.
shouldn't? And
Hmm.
just have to check yourself sometimes. I mean, I should say I have to check myself
Yeah.
sometimes on that.
Well, and I think it's important, like when you check yourself and you really do ask those tough questions. I mean, it's easy, we're such creatures of habit and environment, right? So if your environment has a dead plant there, you just overlook it. And if that dead plant is someone who's creating bad, dark energy in your life,
Yeah.
you know, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh shit,
Hey, there's a dead plant
there's
over
a dead
there.
plant there. Why has that been sitting there? Like, time to clear the room, right?
Yep.
And you know, one of my favorite sayings is fresh water. Like, when you clear energy, when you break the dam and you let the water go and new water comes in and fills it, it's new vibrancy, new energy. Like,
Yeah.
creating that space to allow for something new to come in. That's something new is, you know, you may not plan for it, but boom, it hits and you're like,
Well, you make the
oh
room for it.
man, you make the room, you've made the space for it. And if
Yeah.
your space is full of things that aren't, you know, moving your life forward in one way or another, you should let them go.
Yeah. Absolutely. You should. There's so much. I was just saying this too with a little group text between my business partner and Jill, who runs our world administratively.
Mhm.
I just said the term. I said addition by subtraction,
Yep.
and she was like, "You are so right on this." Like
Yeah.
sometimes it's addition, but it's the dead plant.
Yep.
Oh shit, there's a dead plant in the room. I
Yep.
didn't even notice it.
Yep.
I'm gonna get rid of that, right?
Right.
And then it starts to open things up for so much better.
Well, and in this business as an agent, that dead plant could be a client that's dragging you down
Oh yeah,
mentally, time wise. You know, there are those clients that'll beat you up. There's those clients that'll look at homes for 2 years, and you know, I mean, we had one recently where we'd had a client under contract. She been working with her for 2 years. I've had her under contract 6 times in this marketplace as a buyer. Like, that's like, people are dying to get a deal, and I've gotten her a deal 6 times, and then she cancels. And she'd canceled this last one, and I looked at JC, my operations coordinator, and I was like, "Hey, you okay if I let her go?" And she's like, "I'm totally cool with it." And so,
yeah,
but it was funny. She canceled canceled on a Benzer, and the next day, she sent a text. If it's not too late, I've made a mistake. I do want it. We got her back, and she's closing this month after 2 years, dude. But that's a good lesson too, because when she called me to let me know the afternoon before that she was canceling, I knew that I was going to let her go as a client, but I figured it was just going to be kind of a slow, like, I wasn't going to be like, "Hey, you fired." You know, I was
right.
like, let's just see what she does after this. She's like, "I'm going to take a break." I was like, cool, it'll just fade out.
Yep.
Right. Um, and I was super nice to her. I was like, "I've always just wanted the best for you, you know, like, I really mean it. Like, I want her making the right decision for her." But then the next morning when she sent the text, and then I was like, "Hey, you know, let's talk." She got on the phone and she was like, "I almost didn't send that text because I thought you guys would think that I'm like insane and blah 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 blah." So if I'd been mean, you know,
Yeah.
there are people like, and that's a learned behavior, to not be like, "Bro, you've wasted my time. Like, what are you doing?" Like, you have to be nice to people even when they're screwing you over or you feel like you're getting screwed over, and then they may come back.
There's a lot to unpack there, dude. Like, the fact that you were mental, like you had gone, okay, I'm going to fire this client.
Mm-hmm.
That is so hard for so many people to do.
Mm-hmm.
To go, they think like it's such a natural thing to go. I put 2 years in. I
Yes.
gotta get it. I gotta
Yes.
get it.
Yep.
It's so funny that after that point, that's when you were like, yeah, I'm just gonna have to let her go, right? And then that's when she comes back around, like the
Yeah.
next day. Come
Yeah.
on, you
Dude,
know?
it's almost what I was saying. The harder I force, the
Yeah,
let like the
100%.
I created room to let her go, and boom, she filled it and came back and is getting the deal done.
Yeah, and though, I think you have the Uh, courage. I don't know if courage is the word. You have the courage to do that though, because you're doing what you're supposed to do every day to
Mhm.
bring in enough business
Mhm.
to where one deal doesn't matter.
Mhm.
Like from my income standpoint, which is
Mhm.
I still how so many of us will operate
Yep.
is what's the impact on me versus like, hey, if I'm just doing my job every day, like the money's going to show. It's a byproduct.
Right.
The money will show up.
Right.
It's a byproduct of me doing the right things every
Right.
day. And so then you don't have to get attached to any one closing or any
Yeah.
one
My
client.
precious, right?
Yes.
Like, you're holding on to it, and and it that really is a learned
Yeah.
behavior. I mean, there are times, my wife has been with me for all but like a year, my first year and a half or so. So she sees these cycles, or she sees clients, and like, there have been times where she's like, "Hey, like, can you please fire them? Like, I want my husband back." Like, hello, you know, because if something's going bad, or like a client feels like you're not doing your all and you're really giving it your all and they're not seeing it and you're disconnected, like, it takes a little chunk of your soul. You're like dead
Yep.
eyes at dinner. You know what I mean? It's like, oh
100%.
man, like how can I fix it? It's like watching a relationship crumble in front of you. And when you do really need the income or whatever, it's hard to realize that, hey, if you cut out this cancer, better energy and more money is going to come in behind it. It's hard to do, but to your point, if you're doing everything that you need to do every day, and if you weren't spending 3 hours with this person that isn't transacting or is sucking the life out of you, then get that 3 hours back and put it into work in your database or
Yep.
holding an open house and having people sign in and then putting
Exactly.
them in your database.
Exactly. I was gonna say, go do the open house. I was gonna say exactly that.
3 hours. Dude, Halpern Residential is the home of the 2 hour open house. We don't do 3 hours for the exact thing, the exact reasons why you
Yeah.
said earlier. Dude, when you tell people you can see it between here and here, guess what? You get all of these people show up here. If you're like, you can see between here and here, all these people show up there. If you tell them when it's going to be, they're going to go.
Just so many agents are like, what do you mean you don't have to work 7 days a week, or you don't have to? I'm like, it's the same thing with an open house. If you just tell people up front what the expectation is,
Yep.
they know what to expect. It's not a
Yep.
big deal.
Right.
It's really not. And
Right.
so you can get people to understand this is the way you work and this is the way you do things.
Mm-hmm.
And no, we're not going to look at houses if when you're not ready.
Yeah.
Like my
Yeah.
buddy Craig yesterday was teaching about how he teaches the agents on his team. They have a pipeline system and it's A's, B's, and C's, right?
Mm-hmm.
And A's are they're transacting this month,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're ready, willing, and able. They're
Mm-hmm.
transacting this month. B's are almost there, but not quite. C's are, they're C's.
Mm-hmm.
And so, he talked about just the ability to, when you recognize you've got a C or a B that really is more like a C, to just like, hey, we're probably not going to go look at how. It's like, it's okay when you set that expectation, or you set the expectation of, hey, these are the days I do my showings, or some
Mm-hmm.
whatever that thing, like, or
Mm-hmm.
this is when I present offers.
Yep.
I used to have agents mad at me all the time because when I was taking listings, I just don't present listing offers on the weekend. I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would just ask my clients permission up front after the listing appointment to present them multiple offers on Monday instead of one offer at a time over the
Right.
weekend. And they'd be like, yes, of course, that's so much better.
It's better for all of us.
Yes. And I'd be like, it is, because then more offers are better, right?
Yep.
And so that's how I did it. And it would always invariably, it'd piss off an agent every weekend because
Right.
I wasn't going to present their offer
Mm-hmm.
that they submitted Friday night at 7 o'clock. I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
going to present it till Monday morning at 10.
Mm-hmm.
And and then there's other people like, you can't do that. I'm like, well, actually you can, as long as the client knows what the expectations
Right.
are and they know the rules of engagement, they're good.
Yep. Well, and those expectations, it's funny. You see a lot of the expectations set in the MLS, like, oh, coming soon, no showings until blah, blah, blah. And then you see it go pending, right? It's like agents set expectations and they break them on the MLS, where it's like, when you really set them to your point of like,
Actually hold your
hold to it.
Yep.
We put very specific rules in place for our listings, like, hey, available to see during the open house from 11 to 1 on Saturday, 11 to 1 on Sunday. Offers due Sunday by 7 p.m. We'll get back to you Monday by 7 p.m. And when agents call and they go, is there any chance my client can get in? Or like, I've got this
Yeah, 11
juicy
to
offer.
1.
Yeah, exactly. 11 to 1. Or when agents call and go, hey, are you really sticking to it? I go, absolutely. I put that in writing. That's my word. I'm standing by it. The clients know this is what we're doing. They're expecting this. Like, this is what we're doing. And agents, there will be like, thank you so much. Thank you for holding to your word. So like the expectations that you set both with clients, with employees, with
Because then everybody knows how to
agents.
behave.
Yeah, it's
Everybody knows
super easy.
everybody knows the rules of engagement.
Yep.
We know how to behave. We know
Yep.
what the rules are. We
Yep.
know, like, okay, cool. Now I can play. I can paint between these lines. It's not that hard.
Well, and I think in as an agent, setting those expectations is so important to play within those lines. And so many agents don't know how to set the expectation.
Well, they
Or
haven't set
don't.
it. They don't, because they have never set expectations for themselves.
That's a good point.
So it's like 24/7. Of course, I'll do whatever my client
Yeah,
says.
whatever.
I'm like,
Oh, hey, we want to look at homes. Okay.
yeah,
You
okay,
know,
I'm gonna run right out.
well, one of the best things that we've implemented is we have a client intake form. We have a buyer, we
Yeah.
call it a buyer discovery session, and we have a seller discovery session.
Yep.
And we don't pass go until you've sat down
Those
for
those
those.
happen first. There's
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
There's no. I don't care
Yep.
if you just want to go buy a new building. You
Yep.
just need me to go sign you
Yep.
in. Like, this
We're
happens.
still having this.
Yep.
Yeah. Because we have all of our questions. It lays out, we figure out what the real motivation is, what they really want. Like, I
Yeah.
really want this and it needs to look and feel like this. What is your success? Now we've got our target. Now we can build the system. But it also gives us a chance to set those expectations. Hey, what we approach it this way. This is what we do until you get pre-qualified. We're not going to see homes. Your ticket to open doors is a pre-qualification in your hand, because otherwise, without that, we can't build your searches. We don't know what price you're looking for. We're shooting blind and we're not armed. We're not ready to submit an offer until we have a pre-qual. So we won't do any of it until you do it. And then we set expectations of what they can expect in the market. Hey, as a buyer, you're going to get your teeth kicked in a few times. You're going to get your heart broken. You're going to lose. This is how we go around it. This is how we try to get you to win offers. This is our system. But please expect it's going to be tough. And please expect when I say, hey, I'm coming to you. I've spoken with the agent. The competition looks like this. Your offer needs to look like that to be competitive. Are you willing to do that? Know that that's going to happen. And sometimes these terms look silly. Waiving appraisal, putting down non-refundable earnest money after the inspection, like big things. We're going to keep you safe, but you have to understand, in order to win, this is what it looks like. And right now, winning in this marketplace, I tell this to my buyers, winning in this marketplace is getting you the deal, not getting you the best deal. You're not going to get a good deal in this marketplace. You're going to get the deal.
The deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it really is, dude. It's all the other reason why I think that that consultation is so important is to set expectations, but
Mm-hmm.
when you ask the right questions, you can find out if there's any hidden expectations they haven't told you about,
Mm-hmm.
or like they're not outwardly saying. So that way, like, hey, there's a landmine here.
Yeah.
We need to address it
Yeah.
now in the room rather than out in the field
Yep.
or in the middle of a negotiation or something like that.
Dude, totally. And it's such a good point to, when you see those landmines, to sweep them, to clear them right away.
Yeah.
And agents will see it and they're like, oh, there it is. Like, and they'll keep it. They don't want to have the tough conversation. Like, I think having a tough conversation up front is so much easier than on the back end, when that landmine, when like your foot
Oh,
is on the landmine and you can't move it. If you do, you're blowing up. Like, and people will do that. They know it's there and they'll step right on it, instead of being like, hey, let's rewind the tape. I'll do that a lot. Hey, can we rewind the tape and go back to the thing that you said about blah, blah, blah? Can you explain that more?
yeah.
And then pull that out. And then you're like, okay, cool. We just diffused that landmine, or that landmine is not diffusable.
Yeah.
Like, we need the bomb squad.
And so now we know. Well,
Now we
cool. Now we
know.
know we can, you know what? Let's not move forward,
Yeah.
or,
Yep.
whatever the answer looks
Yeah.
like.
When you get that landmine cleared, then we can move forward. But that
Yeah.
thing is going to prevent us from transacting because of this, that, and the other thing. Instead of getting to the transaction and being like, oh, that landmine that you kind of mentioned in passing that I didn't take care of. Yeah, my foot's on it right now.
Yeah.
Or your foot's on it,
Yeah.
Mr. and Mrs. Buyer.
Good
Seller.
luck.
Yeah, good luck. I'm out.
Let me know how that turns out for you. So awesome. Yeah, dude, I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about expectations, both for yourself, for your
Yep.
clients, for everybody, for everyone around you. Like,
Yep.
there's no doubt about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And, so much of this translates, so much of the stuff that we talk about, because this business is so interpersonal. Whether you're a
Yeah.
team lead and you're encouraging and working with agents, whether you're an agent who's working with clients, so much of it, we learn how to interact with people, like, on a very personal level. And so much of this, like, I pull back into my family too, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's so many times where, like, learning in business that you need to correct non-performance right away of an employee, of whatever this is. Hey, this isn't working. Or like, hey, um, I really like the way you answered that call there, but next time, can you please remember to blah, 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 or think about this next time. Right. So that if you hear them answering the phone and the 50th time, you're like, I fucking told you not to do it that way. Like, you blow up if you let it stack up. Otherwise,
Yep.
so if you see something that's not going right, you address it right there.
Yeah.
And like,
Run to the problem.
run to the problem.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the things that I learned, I forget one of my people that I pay attention to, mentors, was like, it's super easy to just go, what did you mean by that? Right. If someone says something and you're like, dude, was that a jab? Was that passive aggressive? Was that like, I don't really know how to take that. Just ask them, what did you mean by that? And then they'll like fess up, or they'll back it down and go, you know what, that did come out like pretty shitty, and I'm sorry. Like, I didn't mean it that way, or I'm antsy about that. Well, let's unpack why you're antsy. Da 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 da.
Yeah.
Right? It always leads to something else.
That reminds me of Fred's favorite script ever is like, tell me more.
Tell me more.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, it's applicable in so many
much.
scenarios.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, exactly. What do you mean by that? Or tell me more.
Yeah.
And like, boom. And I find so often when I ask questions like that, whether it's of a cross agent, a client, my kids, whatever, they just will go and go and go and go and go. And then especially cross agents, you're like, bingo, you just told me exactly what I needed.
Yeah.
And I asked you one question, or I asked
Yeah.
you like a simple leading question, and you just unfolded everything. So now I've got everything I need to know to fix the problem or to get my offer over the hump. Or now I know that my kid is upset, but she's really not upset at her teacher. She's really upset at her friend because her friend said this.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
she just uncorked.
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, solid.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's actually a good thing to end on. But before we do that, tell me, actually, dude, let's do this first. If someone wants to kind of just follow and maybe
Mhm.
check out what you are doing online, because you,
Mhm.
as we talked about earlier, like that's a big part of your
Yeah.
strategy. What's the best place for people to find you?
I think my Instagram account is always really up to speed with what we have going on with both what we post and stories. So at Halpern Residential.
Cool. And we'll link to that in the show notes. So okay, so anybody who wants to check out Trevor, trust me, he's got some really good branding and marketing going on. Check it out. Um, so you and I, what first week of March 2022 right now
Yeah.
that we're recording this.
Yep.
This will be out in a couple weeks. Um, what are you like most excited about or anticipating throughout the rest of this year,
Yeah.
real estate wise?
You know, I think it's going to be really exciting and interesting to see if the market continues at its trajectory. I don't think it's necessarily going to continue to appreciate the way it has been appreciating, but I get this is you don't think I'm a sadist or whatever, but I get excited during chaos.
Yeah,
Like
there's opportunity
there's
in chaos.
opportunity in chaos, and when you have, systems together and you're able to pivot quickly, I love like when COVID came around and I was the one guy in my office, like everyone else was, real estate was essential. So like my office is 4 minutes from my house. I'd go in and no one would be there. And I like rip my business apart and put it back together. Like I rebuilt it based on I had some time. And so
Yeah,
it was fun and exciting. And so now like I think for me, what I'm excited the most about is just figuring out the next riddle. Like that's what we do.
yeah,
Things aren't working. Buyers aren't getting their contracts accepted. What can we do? Da 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 da. Like I call it being a key maker. Like file the key, try the door. It's not working. File the key, try the lock. This is open. Everyone run. Boom. This is what's working. And then the door closes and we file it down again. And so I think when we're in these periods of market appreciation, when we're super seller weighted or super buyer weighted or whatever it is, when we're not really in balance, it's about figuring out how to continue to drive client success. And so I'm excited about the opportunity surrounding a lack of knowing really where this thing is going.
yeah. That's awesome. Good way to
Thanks.
put that too. I like that.
Thanks,
Well,
man.
anything else? Anything else I haven't asked you that I should have, or anything that's just
No,
burning desire to
no,
share?
we went down the rabbit hole
Yeah,
as
we did.
always,
I was
man.
gonna say we went a whole bunch of
Dude,
different
we
directions
are,
there, dude.
I love, like, I've gotten so much out of knowing you, man. I appreciate you
Same.
having me on. And like, when we get together, it's just like, dude, da, 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 da.
Yeah.
And, being involved and you thinking of me for your events, I always take great stuff away, like life-changing stuff.
Right.
So, us sitting on that stage at that lender forum, literally there were times
I
it was
know.
so funny. Like you'd have an answer and I'd like look over and be like, bro. And then I could see you looking over at me
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Like,
So
all right, we're gonna talk to this
yeah,
guy
yeah,
later.
we
Yeah.
gotta hook up, and it's been great, man. So thank you
Totally
so
agree.
much.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. My pleasure. Thanks a lot for being here and on the Kevin and Fred show. And we'll see you guys next week.